This is a really special moment because most of the work that I've done, I do it very much by myself. It is just me, it is just my face, it is just my information. And, a little bit about me is one of my biggest struggles, one of my traumas that I had so early on that was so relentless is called enmeshment trauma. And I've talked about this with Ziggy. And what enmeshment trauma is it's sort of like this feeling of being in the presence of another person and just losing your sense of self. So this is something that I have struggled with my entire life, that I have worked with and worked with and worked with again in dating and friendships and relationships and my work relationships, just anytime there is basically another human around, I've had to really work on it. And so I get all of my information from my meditations. I sit my ass down and I meditate, and a download comes through. And the download came through of the next step to not only reach more people, to really, really help more people, to really like deliver well-rounded information that really speaks to just what people need to hear to make those changes in their life. It has to involve others.
Mm.
A lot of my work and what I teach and what I preach and also what I live is that your traumas can either freeze you, because that's what a trauma is, or you can make art with them. And so if you're in any of my courses online, which I will put all of the links below, that is the action step that a lot of people miss, is that they will get lost in the story, or they will get lost in managing their traumas rather than seeing the divinity in them as making art. So that is the introduction for you. I'm sure we're going to get into so many things. I do have my good friend Ziggy here, who is a life mastery
Life navigation facilitator, and I do offer a couple of courses. One is a 30-day challenge,
Yeah.
and the other is more of a mind mastery program, which is just mastering the mind,
Yeah, perfect.
which is a tough one.
The mind is a tough one, as we know, because it's that monkey brain. And if there's anyone that I know that has truly mastered the mind, it is you. And so when I was sitting in meditation, the very first person that came on that I wanted to have on the podcast is you. And I'll share with you briefly kind of the reasoning behind, I think, why that download dropped in so profoundly is because you had shared some about your past, and it's just very interesting, very traumatic, there was just so much, gaslighting. There was so much power over
Mm.
you, and knowing you, Ziggy's heart is just, you have a heart, and you have a presence,
Mm.
and you have a sensitivity, and you have like a awareness of what's going on in your internal environment. And I know that you've gone through so much to get to this place now where you truly love yourself, where you have that mind mastery, where you're really, really helping other people.
Mm.
And I just feel like you are the living, breathing, walking permission slip for other men who can relate to you, who have gone through things in their past that where it's really difficult to look at. It's not easy for a man to dive into that work. So yeah, I just kind of want to start there and maybe just ask you about, if are you okay getting a little bit personal? I don't know. I forgot to ask you that before the
I'm
podcast.
very okay with getting personal. That's what it's all about.
Okay, great. Whatever you want to share just about your journey of the development of yourself. Yeah, the development of yourself, the work you've gone through, what's really worked, some of the things that you've gone through. And was there a defining moment? Like, was there that defining moment where you were like, I can't live like this anymore. I have to do something. I have to make some kind of internal change.
There was, and I'll give the nutshell because I know there's a lot you want to cover.
Yeah.
Throughout my life, I started out just unaware that this actually affected me. I started out very young, at about 9 years old. My family moved me into what would look or is a cult.
Yeah.
So that I thought was just normal.
Yeah.
But I was put into a military situation pretty early on, like 9, 10 years old, shaved head, and 40, 50 guys in a bunkhouse. And we were woken up at 4 a.m. and made to run 5 or 10 mile, every morning and
Mhm.
make the bed. We built, we tore down, we deconstructed facilities and rebuilt buildings. I was 10 or 11 years old, 2 bathroom breaks a day, watching people
Wow.
getting beat up, every
Ugh,
day. And this is normal.
that's
So
crazy.
I actually wore that for most of my adult life. At 13, I moved out, moved in with my mom. My dad was still in this place. It was called Synanon. And there was no training, or there was no decompression. There was basically no one to walk through it with me.
Like no debriefing.
No debriefing.
Like
Yeah,
nobody was there saying like, hey, this is a weird situation and everything that you're feeling is valid. Like there was
Exactly.
no validity to it.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I just basically had to internalize it.
You're right. Oh,
So, at
yeah.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then I'm shaved head,
Right.
standing at a bus stop, going to a regular school. So that was how my life shifted.
Wow.
And I just wore it as a badge. For most of my life, I basically thought I was tough,
Mm,
which I think most men struggle with what tough is supposed to look like or what we're supposed to do with it. Are we supposed to act really mean, or are we supposed to
yeah.
just act like we can handle everything? We're kind of told we're supposed to be able to be the ones that just manage life,
Yeah.
don't show any lack that you can't handle it, right?
Right.
So basically,
And can I pause there? Because
yeah.
I actually want to like dial in on that. What is that for a man? Because I think, like you said, all men, or if not a lot of men, relate to that. They feel that. Like, where does that come from? Do you think that's societal? Is that internal? Is that biological? Is that messages? Like, what is that?
Well, we know that it's the entire biopsychosocial.
Hmm.
It's nature versus nurture. It's
Absolutely.
in our DNA
Yeah.
from back in the day when we were cavemen,
Yeah.
right? We were the ones that went out and hunted.
Hmm.
We protected. And that's also where the amygdala comes in. It's at
Hmm.
the earliest stages of our lives, the amygdala was there just to protect us when there was a lion,
Right.
not in everyday functions, not
Hmm.
trying to get hits on social media and feeling bad. And that starts to control your entire life. But for me, or the question you're asking is for me, it's both. It's
Yeah.
both nature versus nurture. So nature and nurture. So
Right.
it's psychological.
Hmm.
It's what we're taught culturally. It's what we're taught through, entertainment, media.
Hmm.
So it's a mixed bag.
It is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for touching on that.
Yeah. And I'm still, I'm 61 and I'm still discovering all of it.
Right.
But from that point, I grew up, I thought I was a marketing guy. That was my thing in my head.
Mm.
So I was one thing. I was this marketing guy, and that's what I did all
Hmm.
through my life. And then at one point, I worked in the entertainment industry. At one point, my life shifted and I moved to
Mm.
Bali and lived there for about 8 years and really thought I had my life dialed in. I was doing video production overseas.
Okay.
I was creating reality shows. I was working with a large chain of hotels,
Hmm.
had a pretty good client base, and then came back because my mother was dying. And by the time I landed, she had passed.
Oh,
But
gosh.
when I
That's
got back,
heartbreaking.
it
Yeah.
was. And to tell you the truth, I don't remember it feeling that heartbreaking. I didn't
Really?
really know how to tap into that, right?
Yeah. And how old were you? Because you mentioned your age now. How old were you then? So, because a lot of the words that you're using to even describe this part of your life is like, I was the marketing guy. And I think this is really common with men, is like for that part of their life, their identity gets funneled into who they are out in the world, especially in terms of their career,
hmm
which
I
is not a bad
was.
thing. It's just
No,
it's
no, I
what it
think it is
is.
what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally just
And
is what it
it's
is.
great. It would be wonderful if we were given the opportunity to learn more about who we are and
Right.
how we process
Mhm.
and have open spaces where this can be more accepted
Yeah.
and taught, who we
Right.
are, what we are, learning our somatic self, learning how to be present.
Yes.
We're just taught to man up and move forward.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, keep going and let's come back to that, like how you learned how to be somatically present as a man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought I was, and
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I was so spun out in my head because I didn't realize this until 5 years ago. You asked me how old I was. I would say I was approximately 50, 40,
Hmm.
48.
Okay.
No, I was 44 when I moved to Bali,
Okay.
around there. I had been married twice. I
Okay.
already had 3 children.
Right.
I was dating a woman that was 10, 12 years my junior,
Okay.
an Asian woman, and we both moved to Bali.
Hmm.
And although it was a lot of fun, it was an adventure to be in Bali,
Right.
and I was doing a lot of wonderful things. I was literally living on the edge. I was not a citizen, and I was filming a
Mhm.
reality show about. It was called Miss Bali Tropics. So
Okay.
it was finding all these young women and
Hmm.
trying to help them facilitate a career. And
Cool.
also it was a skin product line, but I was doing it on the fly and very illegal in a third world country.
Okay. Got it.
So I was constantly fearful.
Okay. Interesting.
My mom had passed. I came
Right.
back, went back, basically packed up. My dad was a little frail. He was already 88. And I thought it's time. My kids, I could tell they kind of needed me, although I had flown them out to Bali a couple of times.
Hmm.
But they needed me. And so I flew back. I made a choice to end it all. At the time, I thought I was pretty well dialed in. I was doing
Right.
yoga, I was doing meditation. There was all
Hmm.
kinds of weekend retreats. There was many things that I did. And when I landed back in the States, about 3 weeks later, I just got a chance to buy a car, went out to my dad. He had hurt his back. He was in the hospital. Then I spent all day with him. And I had spent 3 weeks with him when my mother had passed because I was visiting and we did a celebration of life. That's when I moved back to Bali, sold everything and moved back to the States. And he passed that night. I was supposed to get him out of the hospital the next morning.
Oh, wow.
That's two.
Okay, wow.
And then,
And that's a lot of heart emotions.
Oh.
And this is kind of, I would just want to pause there and draw out that, because this is oftentimes like for a man who's, not to get super woo-woo, but like whose soul, whose higher self is on the path to healing, there comes a time when he is forced into his heart. Like he is forced into you. You can't not be in your heart when a parent dies. And if two die back to back, that
and I can
is
tell you, I was not in my heart yet.
yeah.
I still sat up just to
Yeah.
continue. That happened. Then I, had a celebration of life for him, had a burial. Everybody came out, and, I just still was in my head,
Right.
right? I'm still
Yeah.
just doing the movement,
Yeah.
and came back to the house a couple weeks later. My wife, we had just gotten married. We had been together for 8 years. Her and I had some differences. I was running a new company. I was traveling to Europe and to Asia every month, and she was starting to get distant. And that was the first time I've ever seen that. And it was my third wife, right?
Right.
And I didn't want, as a man, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to being a man and owning up and being there for your kids if it doesn't work out with the parent, with me and my partner. So there's challenges in paying for, child support
Oh, yeah.
and all the things that go with it and trying to be there for all these kids. I have 3 kids.
Right.
So at this point, I find out that she's cheating on me. We separate.
Oh,
COVID hits.
wow. Okay, so that's like 3 heartbreaks back to back. And because of your training in childhood, you actually built up such a strong
My
wall
shell was
there.
really thick.
Must have been so thick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm so glad we're getting into this, because this is really good.
Good. So she moved out and I was sitting in my house by myself. COVID had just hit. And my company, I found out that my partner that I had just partnered with a year earlier and literally moved my entire agency into this company. We were working with some pretty major clients. I find out he's embezzling money from all the investors.
Wow.
So now I'm literally walking into an office, having to disband an entire company
Oh, shit.
while COVID's happened, just starting,
Right.
and carrying, I remember letting everybody go and then carrying everything out to a storage by myself. And, I remember trying to get toilet paper and, all these crazy things. So that's when I remember right when she had, when I realized her and I weren't going to stay together, I remember saying to my family, I've got this. Everything's fine.
And did you really believe it? Were you
At the time,
okay?
I really believed it.
Was your head spinning? Was somatically, were you lit up yet?
Couldn't even tell you that I knew.
Okay.
And then I went home.
Okay.
And I sat in my house.
Yeah.
And I am, military background.
Right.
I have I didn't know this yet, but I highly OCD, heavy PTSD.
Yeah.
And with a smidgen of ADHD.
Yeah.
So, and I'm being facetious because I have a lot of ADHD.
Okay.
So I remember sitting there, my body felt like it was bruised every time I washed my hands.
Wow.
I wouldn't leave my bedroom unless everything was in my hands. I never wanted to make a mistake and challenging myself to not waste any time. And I'm still thinking I got this, right?
Right.
And I remember breaking down. I had this overwhelming fear or feeling that I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't fake it anymore.
Yeah. And it was a fear.
It was a fear.
Okay.
Fear of loneliness, fear of, it's that innate feeling of being kicked out of the tribe.
Oh, yeah.
And I really never felt like I was in a tribe. And
Right.
everybody around me felt and knew that I was the guy that was in the tribe.
But you never felt like you were in the tribe, because you had your, your what I like to call the vulnerable self that was here. That's the marked by the trauma and the walls. And then you were projecting and managing. And tell me if this sounds accurate.
So far, perfect.
Yeah, in a persona you who was a part of the tribe, but you were never actually a part of the tribe. It was never real for you. It was never connected to the body, right?
I didn't even know how to connect it to.
Of course. Well, why would you?
I was
why
just
would
pretending.
any man?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just acting as if.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're told to do.
Yeah.
So the first thought was, I need to take responsibility for every thought, word, and action.
Wow. That's super powerful.
And I didn't realize how much that meant, because how do you take responsibility? As soon as you try to do that, it's a never-ending battle, because you can never, you can take responsibility for it, but you're going to fail over and over and over.
Yes. And so what was the motivation? Like, how did you land at that place where you're like, I'm going to take responsibility for every word, thought, and action? Was it something you heard? Was it a download? Was it like to get yourself out of any type of victim consciousness? Because I do think that's powerful. To get out of any victim consciousness is when you take ownership over everything. And
I,
that's the fine line, but go on.
not, I think I remember feeling like I was standing up
Hmm.
in my head
Okay.
with a shield
Ah,
and a sword.
yeah.
And I felt like I was at the same time putting it down.
Oh, interesting.
So it felt like this dichotomy
Yeah.
between being a man
Yeah.
and owning what really, for me, manhood really meant, and waking up to what I had thought or the fears that I had that I had never faced, but acted as if. And at the
Hmm.
same time, the words that were coming out of my mouth were absolutely the opposite. I've got this, everything's fine, but inside I'm
Wow.
like, do they even like me? You know, every call.
Right.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I was so in my head. I was at a dinner once in Bali with two clients, and we sat there talking for like an hour, hour and a half. And I remember about 30 minutes in, they were talking, and I was, and I could act as if my mask was great.
Yes.
People trusted me, people understood me,
Right.
people felt like I was totally there, or so I thought. But this couple, one of them was talking about his life, and I, about 30 minutes in, said, "So, do you have kids?" And it got quiet. I don't know why it did. I didn't know why it did at the time. But when I got home, my fiance at the time said, "Do you know why it got quiet?" And I'm like, no, what happened? And he was talking about his two boys for a half hour. And
Oh.
then you asked, do you have
Oh,
kids?
wow.
So
Mm,
when I took ownership to be responsible for my thoughts, words, and actions, it was not like I got a specific download. I just knew
okay.
I didn't want to live in this space of inviting in this negative energy that was always seemed to be around me.
Yeah.
I caused it, like even when I was filming or producing or doing whatever, I worked hard, but it wasn't smart work. I was always fearful of
Hmm.
failure all my life, fearful of not being enough for
Yeah.
my partner, not being enough for my kids, fearful of anybody
Right.
really tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, buddy, you're not in your seat. That's my seat." I always felt
Hmm.
like I was not where I belonged.
And that's what happens. I mean, not just for men, but for all people, is when there's that split and there's the part that feels fearful, feels like he doesn't belong, feels like maybe he's unlovable. Maybe we haven't touched on that concept yet, but just feels inadequate, feels like imposter syndrome, then that's like the subconscious, right? So that's about 95% of you. And we're always kind of creating and manifesting from all parts of us, not just our thoughts and what we think and what we desire and what our egos and personalities want. And so it almost sounds like you were creating, you had woven in and birthed a life that you were living in that was largely from this fear and then a little bit from this ego. So there was so much to maintain
And from my past traumas,
and from your past trauma.
trying to keep up with that and make that cool,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
never really dealing with it.
Exactly.
And still not knowing any of my issues with PTSD, not knowing that I had OCD, not knowing that I had ADHD, and it
Right.
was getting worse because of digital media.
And which, yeah, which happens.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when things kind of fell apart, it was a hard fall
It was.
and a long fall, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
And then the journey began.
Yeah.
And that was
Ah,
a little over 5 years
and
ago.
then the journey began. I love that because there's so much, if that feels like the exhale.
I remember the first thing I did is I said, I'm going to do a 30-day challenge to cleanse my everything. So it
Wow.
started with getting on the mat, doing yoga, but for the
Okay.
first time doing it in a way that allowed me to be fully present. And that was
Yeah.
a difficult challenge. Just being present, all of a sudden I heard things I was missing my
Yeah.
entire life.
So, what would you share with the viewers listening or watching? Because you kind of touched on a little bit of dopamine addiction. You touched on like all of this, like just trauma, complex trauma, shock trauma, ADHD, like so much in your head.
Mm.
There was so much difficulty in that. Like, what would you share as like, here's how you get started with that? Because to go, I work in addiction and this is not addiction, but what I can say about the human neurology is that when you go from what you're used to something that has less immediate gratification and you are choosing to be really present, it's really hard. For you, was it like willpower? Was it divinity? Like what? Like how would you describe that in a way that's useful for other people who want to start really making that mind body connection?
It's one step at a time. It's one dish at a time. I always try to equate it to two things. One is a CPU, a computer. If you have too many tabs open, the CPU is challenged. It's too much power, too many things going in too many directions.
Mhm.
And as we know, the brain has a certain amount of power, 100% power that can go to different brain waves.
Right.
whether it's delta or beta. And when I started studying neuro brain work, basically, and got my clinician's license, I found that most of us don't have training to the brain. We don't have that ability to train the brain.
Right.
There's no school to go to. We can train our muscles. We can train our
Yeah.
ability or acumen in business or, in learning language, linguistics. But when it comes to training the brain, because we don't understand it, and it's challenging. So to answer your question, I would say the easiest way to start is to start simple, one thing at a time.
Okay.
And I really mean, like, for instance, brushing your teeth
Right. That's what we were
or
talking
a
about
cold
before we
shower.
started. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So the cold shower,
You're just
'cause
getting out of your brain.
you get out of your brain. Okay.
So I started studying tantric, and that took me through a whole process of learning myself. And then I started doing psilocybin, and I
Yeah.
did some very heavy journey work,
Yeah.
and major downloads from that. And then I started learning more about breath work and
Mhm.
meditation. I started studying Kundalini, which is a very difficult yogic breath. But all of them is just getting to know brain, because the amygdala fires on its own. It doesn't take us to do anything.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's there to protect us, but it's not there to let us be successful or find love.
Yeah.
It's not what it's there for.
Right. It's
It-
very black and white.
Very black and white.
And yeah, and I'm sure the viewers probably know what the amygdala is, but it's like the brainstem way deep in there, like reptilian, like
Yeah.
the way I always explain it, just because it captures attention really, is like brainstem goes, basically, is it safe or unsafe? Can I eat it? Can I fuck it? Or should I run from it? And it kind of lumps it into that category. And then it shoots up an emotional sensation into the limbic system, which is more of like the monkey part of our body. And then the least informed and the last to know is the conscious brain, because the conscious brain sits atop all of that. This is what separates us from animals in the wild. And the conscious brain will just lop on a meaning. Oh, well, you did that because you fucking suck. And then we believe it, which then that's that top-down processing creates the feeling and then re-simulates the amygdala. And we all, I could probably confidently say we all loop in that. But what you're saying is like what you do and what you've learned to do and what you teach others is you get to know the brain. You go straight for what's causing those thoughts and get a really good grip on that, because then everything else can articulate around that or soften around that. Does that sound accurate? Or?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
you said it better than I would have been able to say it, but I think that it's all about training the brain, because
Yeah.
once we're capable of becoming witness to it rather than just being a slave to it.
Right.
And most of us are at some level, I would say all of us at some level are slaves to the brain,
Yeah.
the amygdala. So the prefrontal cortex, the biggest part of our brain that makes us human, besides
Yes.
our thumbs,
Yes.
has
Yeah, that's it.
a
Those are
lot
the
of
only two differences,
yeah.
really, which is wild. But
right.
yeah.
And we're also the only race that's, you don't see animals that are stressed out unless we've caused that stress.
Exactly. You also don't see animals with PTSD
No.
unless they've been socialized. The prefrontal cortex, which is, it's like this region up here in a human, it causes us to hold on to trauma because we've been socialized not to shake. We've been socialized not to feel into those depth of emotions that are very colorful because they're attached to certain thoughts, and we're feeling them in past and future states rather than in the present. We're also the only species that will follow an unstable leader. And that's not a political statement. I'm not like a political person. It's just a fact, like a wolf tribe, when the alpha wolf falters, then there's going to be a new one. Like there's going to be a fight, and the animals aren't, the wolves aren't watching it being like, oh, I hope he wins, or I hope he doesn't win, or I'm so nervous, or what's going to happen to our past or our future. They all know because they're not, thinking. So I think it's really powerful. What I'm trying to say is the mind mastery work that you do, because gosh, I mean, if you don't have mind mastery, then are you even human, or are you kind of a slave to your animal instincts and also woven in with a bunch of human presuppositions about what all of it means?
Yeah. And I think the hardest part is getting out of fear or anxiety, which is either yesterday or tomorrow. What's going to happen or what I didn't do well enough. So shame, fear, anxiety.
Okay.
And if we can get our minds to be present, then it gives us a chance to understand our somatic, understand what we're feeling, knowing how to draw healthier boundaries, knowing that what we're doing might be not healthy for us and how can we change them. But ultimately, it's one thing at a time. It's literally just challenging ourselves to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations, healthy ways. You don't need to get into a cold plunge every day for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
But getting in the shower to start and flipping it to cold at the end and being able to handle 30 seconds, calming the autonomic nervous system or the anxiety that immediately goes, and you just go, and you just breathe, right? That's the trick, is learning to
So
control the brain.
is one of the main techniques it through breath work? Is that one of the ways that you teach others to control the brain?
That's one of the ways. I wouldn't say
Okay.
main, because sometimes I have some clients, or I've had some clients that if I started with breath work or meditation, that would turn them off. That's too airy-fairy for them.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So starting with a cold shower might be the way to go.
Got it.
Starting with just brushing your teeth for 2 minutes with an electric toothbrush and
Right.
saying, I want you to try to, and this is a really good challenge if you're willing to try it, 2 minutes every night for a week. Just try to stay present in sensation, not in thought.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. But basically, you're just paying attention to what it feels like having the bristles run across your gums.
Yeah.
Which is a difficult one because you'll immediately go right back into thought. It's like I just say, it's like a river of thoughts. And as they go by, try to unhook from them. Just let them be.
Right.
It's okay that they're there, be the witness of them. Stay away from them. Let them just float by. It's a
Yeah.
hard thing to do.
It would be a super hard thing to do. If someone were to do like the toothbrush and the shower thing, so they do the toothbrush thing, they have that 2 minutes, they go take a cold shower. Is there any type of other information that you need? Because I think cold showers and cold plunges are like everywhere now. Everyone's like, do that. But then I've heard people ask questions like, well, how do I calm myself? Like, what do I do when I'm in the shower? I'll use me as an example because I really hate cold showers. And I'll do other mindfulness practices and definite like feminine embodiment practices and movement and meditation. Like I'll do all of that and I love it. And I'll do some of the hard stuff too. But anyways, I just have this real thing about coldness. But my instinct when I get into a cold shower is I get fucking pissed. And I just am like, what the fuck am I doing? Like
That's your amygdala.
Yeah. Like I hate this. And so my go-to is anger. And sometimes I'm just like, I don't really need this anger. So like, I'll just not do the cold shower. So anyway, what would you say to me?
The fact that you know these things is really a major plus, that you're aware of this about your body. You're aware that you're getting angry. That's a good start.
Yeah.
Because you do the work. But I would say first, if you don't like a cold shower, there might be another way to do it. There's options. There's tons of options. But anything that we're doing, you're the only one when you're doing it is going to know that you're really doing it. The work starts when your brain starts to say stop. So in your case, I would say you're strong enough. It's not going to hurt you. You're not going to freak out. Asking yourself, being in your head about what it is that's making you angry is probably a good space. I learned this first in tantric with a female, and I was really uncomfortable, and I had to be calm. Or the ask was, can you be calm in it?
Right.
So the thing is, 30 seconds is not a big deal, but 30 seconds full cold, and just see if you can get yourself. It may not happen today. There's another thing is, don't shame yourself if you don't do it. I find a lot of clients stop doing it because their brain says this is stupid, or they start to feel ashamed because they can't do it. Fear or ashamed isn't going to serve us. So stay present.
Right.
And let yourself just be, and just see how long you can breathe calmly. And then the trick is to be able to get your entire body under, do a spin around, 30 seconds.
Okay.
And for you, the fact that you have anger, I think that's probably good. Figure that out. Challenge yourself. I want to know why I'm angry.
Yeah.
It's probably just your brain. It's fear.
And yeah, so that's what I was going to say. It's like the anger is the fight, because now I'm just going to kind of go through a process of why I do get angry. Because I'm remembering when I was giving birth to my first son and I had 2 home births, I had a very similar reaction and it caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting it. And anger is one of the emotions that I way repressed in childhood, where it was like, I can't be angry. I can't feel anger. I kind of just gotta like, something's wrong if I'm feeling angry, but I actually have a natural connection to my anger, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. And that's what I always tell people. Anger is such a demonized emotion. But I was giving birth to my son and I had tried to go to the bathroom and I was standing there like I was trying to like just do it over here, but I was standing on like the sink and I was holding onto it and my belly was hanging out and I was having a contraction. Yeah, at home. I had 2 home births and I'm looking at myself in the mirror. And I, it's hard, like delivering a human out of your vagina is like fucking hard work.
Yeah, I've tried it. It's really difficult.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, what the fuck is that? It's like psychedelic. It's totally psychedelic. But I'm sitting there and I caught eye contact with myself in the mirror and I looked at myself and I go, fuck you for doing this. Like, you fucking bitch. Like, what the fuck? Like, That was my response.
You were angry.
Oh, I was pissed at myself. I was like, why did you
You gave yourself the pain, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
All
like,
the way back to having the relationship, or just
oh, no, just the
why am I
pain.
doing the childbirth thing?
Why am I doing this to myself? This is really hard and I don't like this. Like, this has been going on now for like, what, 36 hours at that point?
Oh,
It was too long.
wow.
I know. Because I didn't know how to soften and open. I was 23. But that was like a big initiation for me. But anyways, I was angry, and I was angry at me. So I projected that anger onto myself. But in terms of fight or flight, I think it's also so useful to know and to understand that anger is always the last ditch effort for survival. Because we are animals, right? And so if we're in a zebra, if we're in a zebra tribe and we're grazing in the grass and like a lion comes out, the first instinct that we have is actually freeze. Don't see us. If I hold my breath, sometimes that's marked by a little bit of shame, a little bit of embarrassment. Then we were like, oh crap, the lion sees us. The next line of defense,
Run.
and is run. So that's flight. So because I think we kind of have it backwards. So then we run. The blood flow goes away from the digestion. You get the cortisol, you get the adrenaline. It's the blood flows all in your extremities. You run. And at the last second, because the zebra loves itself so much, right? It's all self-love. It wants to survive. There's a threat to its survival. What does it do? The lion lunges, running didn't work. The initial freeze didn't work. The zebra goes, you. Like, I fucking love my life. I'm going to fucking attack you. And that is anger, right? So anger is the last ditch effort for survival. It's self-love in a lower vibrational form. And then when that doesn't work, then we have trauma. Then that's actually marked by a secondary freeze where the zebra goes, if I keep fighting, I'm going to have a very painful death. So let my consciousness leave my body, let my muscles go limp. And it's hard to even speak about, because if you've gone through shock trauma, like real PTSD trauma, there's a moment where the breath gets stuck. And this is why I think breath work is so wildly powerful.
So true.
Because that moment of trauma for the zebra, when that second stage of freeze sets in, it's so overwhelming. It's marked by imminent death, that there's this, and then the consciousness leaves. And so going back to the difference between animals and humans, the difference between animals and humans is that a zebra, let's say the lion walks away, the zebra will come back into its body and do this, right? Like, and I can't do it now. I probably actually could, but it goes through this weird shaking process, which I have on YouTube and also on my Instagram.
Yeah.
And what it's doing is the consciousness is coming back into the body and being like, oh, is the zebra there? No, the zebra's not there. Oh, the zebra there? No, the zebra's not there. If it wanted
You mean the lion?
The lion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the lion. If the lion's not there. If I wanted to kick the lion, the leg might go like this over and over and over and over and over again until the body knows the threat is gone.
Is this when the zebra is already dying?
No, let's say the zebra lives.
Okay,
sorry, the zebra lives. The lion is gone for whatever reason. And the zebra is like, I'm going back to my zebra tribe. It does that. It goes back to its zebra tribe, never experiences PTSD. But humans, because we have a prefrontal cortex, we're socialized not to shake. We experience shock trauma. We hold our breath, we freeze, we're in imminent death. And then that gets frozen in time.
And then
we go
later
back to our
on,
life.
triggers
Yes.
bring us right back there, but we don't know it. We're thinking it's happening right now, and it's not. It's from the past.
Yes, exactly.
I lived all my adulthood. I literally still have to fight to take full breaths instead of shallow breathe.
Yes.
And I'm continuing to work on, rather than reactionary responses, action responses. Where I'd actually train myself to go. Because, if you knew me 5 years ago, I wouldn't have given you a chance to speak. And I wouldn't have heard anything you said anyways.
Oh, and you're like the best listener. Like when we have lunch, I don't talk that much, but I talk a lot with you. Yeah.
You got a lot to say.
I have a lot to say. Oh, thank you. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because the transformation that you've gone through is so 180. And again, that is like that permission slip. Because as you know, living with that shock trauma in your body, it's like part of you is missing. It's frozen in time. It's way back there. A person can't fully be embodied if they haven't processed trauma. And unfortunately, I think everyone's experienced trauma.
Yeah. And I think you do really great work with men and them trying to find their peace, their path forward. In a comforted path forward, and really knowing who they are and understanding who they are. And I think that's what resonated with me in watching some of your work.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And I think that for all of us men, and probably for all of us, but because I'm a man, I think, and all the men that I've talked to and work with, I even have men's groups, and it's always prevalent. It's always this, we're not really given permission to be sensitive enough to know who we are.
Yeah.
And so we
Yes.
really don't get a chance to know ourselves. How could we expect that we're going to be able to know what somebody else needs or wants?
Right.
So we fall short.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I needed to man up my entire life.
Yeah.
And that didn't serve me. When I got older, things started to break. And when I wanted to fix it, there was a lot of work. And I remember getting into this men's group, and a doctor in the group had said, when I shared my story about Synanon,
Mm.
this trauma, he had just shared a story about Stalin, Germany.
Mm.
And when I shared my story, he was shocked. He's like, I feel so like my story meant nothing compared to what you just shared. And it was the first time
Oh, wow.
that I really owned it, that
Wow.
I fully went. And then I started crying, and I didn't
Right.
realize it was very tough for me
Yeah. Yeah.
because I never really thought it was, I mean, my kids used to say, wow, Dad, you went through that? I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Oh, just a mask.
Yeah.
I've got this, and I
Yeah.
didn't have it. And
Right.
I wanted it, and I wanted to act like I had it.
Totally.
Sure. So that other companies would hire me, so that my employees liked me, so that my girlfriend liked me, so that
Right.
my kids trusted me. But there is a breakdown between being a man and being fully human.
There is, yeah, and it seems like a good place to kind of like wrap up the conversation of what you're saying, just
Mm.
that gap between what does it really mean to be a man? So do you think that what it really means to be a man is to also be in touch with emotions and body and drive, or what is it? I don't, I'm not a man, so so what does it mean for you to be a man? I mean, you've gone through so much, and I feel like you've experienced both sides of it so intimately, both like the internal exploration and then also the hardcore manning up.
Mm. For me, it means first learning to love myself.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I remember recently, about a year and a half ago, in fact, I have a post on my Instagram of just an empty chair.
Mm,
And it was a symbol of me finally feeling like I paid lock, stock, and barrel for the chair that I sit in.
yeah.
And that's when my life actually changed. That's when I didn't have to just be a marketing guy. I could
Mm,
be someone who could help someone fix their house. I could be someone who does digital tech for a company. I could be an investment, someone who's got an investment, someone who started a new pickleball line, someone who's the
right.
CEO of a pickleball company.
Mhm.
I'm whatever I want to be.
Yeah,
I'm a lover. I'm a
right.
good friend. And I every day when I get on the mat, I remind myself of all my gratitudes. I
Mm,
set an intention,
mhm.
and I spend time in yogic poses, in meditation and breath work, in some Kundalini, which that I would recommend for everybody. In fact, I'd like to have you do one at some point.
I would love that.
It's pretty intense, but I think you'd get a lot from
Oh,
it.
cool. Yeah, I would love that.
Mhm.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's so great. Like, when you said it, my body just felt so good when you were like, the what it means to be a man is just to first love yourself,
Mhm.
because that's so universal. And that's something that I think women can say and not embody, but it's accepted. But for a man to say it and embody it is not as societally accepted. It's more rare, but it's such a universal human thing. Because if we don't have self-love, then I mean, really, what do you have? Life becomes projection and management of our own internal wounds.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm so happy to have you on. And I hope that for everyone that's watching and or listening, that just came together as like, this is somebody that has gone through so much, that has spent so many years, manning up and doing these things, and had to kind of be like, for lack of better words, like gut it a couple times for you to come into your body.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially right around that age 50. Something kind of happens that cracks a man open, it brings him into his heart, and you have a choice, right? Like, this is completely your choice. You can do what Ziggy did. You can really find that self-love. You can do all of these practices that he's mentioned. You can join his 30-day challenge. You can join one of my courses. You can find something else.
Mhm.
You can see what feels good to you in your body. Because like I said, how when you said the self-love thing, my body felt good. Bodies are a biofeedback machine. I very
Yeah.
firmly believe this. They're very accurate when you tune them correctly, and or not. And that is
That's okay too.
that's okay too, because this work isn't for everyone. But I think if you resonate with this, I mean, you probably already know at this point, because there's that feeling in the back of your head that feels like, I need to take action on this. I need to move forward on really finding self-love, because, it sounds morbid, but what I always come back to is like, we're all going to die. And
How do you want to live the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And I tell you, it's not for everybody, but I
Yeah.
do wish that I had someone to mentor me when I was younger.
Right.
But I guess this is where I'm at and why I'm here, and why
Yes.
you do what you do, and why so many men
Exactly.
resonate with that,
Yeah.
because they're looking for, their own comfort, their own space.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe, share this with others. It means a lot, so that I can keep creating more content like this for you. Have a very beautiful rest of your day. And I'll drop all the links below.
Namaste. Have a good day.
Namaste.